Hi, Annette Lang here. Welcome to my podcast, The History of Personal Training, or at least my experience in it. This podcast will be a combination of my stories. Full disclosure, I might not remember things exactly the way that you did. Now, my stories of 30 plus years in the fitness industry and then specifically personal training. I was at the beginning of a lot of events, the firsts, so to speak, and so I hope you enjoy those stories. In addition, I'll be interviewing lots of different people whom I've met through the years, and I think that will help piece together a wonderful timeline of the development of this profession that we now call personal training. Enjoy! Today's interview is with Dr. Jonny Bowden. Jonny was instrumental in the foundational Equinox Fitness Training Institute. He's got a great story of how and why he got into fitness and everything he's done since then. Enjoy.
Okay.
Well, I'm so happy to be talking with Jonny Bowden. What I would like to start with, Jonny, is just, I met you at Equinox in the 90s. And so what brought you there? How did you start? Your background, of your fitness, and I'll just jump in with some questions.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, actually, Annette, I guess you probably never knew this. Equinox was a second career for me. I had been a professional musician, not an aspiring musician. Important to know, I actually paid the rent with my music income. I was a pianist and conductor. Traveled the country. I went to Juilliard.
I can't believe I didn't know that. I feel like maybe I just forgot.
And in the interim, I was actually struggling between two careers for most of the 70s and 80s, and that was between being a professional psychologist and being a professional musician. And while I was doing my music training and my music work, I picked up a master's in psychology and planned to go all the way to the PhD, and at some point realized I got to pick one of these two things because I'm not smart enough or good enough or determined enough or motivated enough to be both a terrific professional musician and a professional PhD clinical psychologist. So I dropped out of psychology with a master's degree, actually what they now affectionately call an ABD, all but dissertation.
All right.
And went full-time into music. And I was fat. I was addicted to every drug in the physician's desk reference. I was a smoker. I thought that a good breakfast was waking up at 11, having an aspirin and a cigarette. And that's kind of what I came from: sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I came from the Woodstock era. I was a jazz musician, a conductor of pop music like Little Shop of Horrors and Godspell and things like that. And I would go on the road with these guys, with these actors, and honestly, I was heavy. If I look back at pictures of myself then, I look like my father.
Wow.
And out of boredom, one day, stuck in one of these podunk towns where they do bus and truck tours and having the full day free, I finally said to the actors, show me how to lift these weights. What is this stuff? These guys that was their job, was to look good. And they worked out and they did all these things. And there I am and I'm bored. And so I finally said to one of the guys, Mike, I said, so how do you do this stuff? And he started to show me a couple of things, and I kind of got bitten by the bug.
Wait, Jonny, what year do you think you're talking right now?
I'm talking 80s.
Okay.
Basically, 80s, when I was touring around with these shows and doing these different things. And Annette, I tell you something, I just got bitten by this bug. I was not one of those people who made an instantaneous change. I was one of the people who went to the gym, did a set of bench press, and went out and had a cigarette as a break. It took me a while to make habitual, to change my diet, to change lifestyle things. But I loved this weight stuff. And before I knew it, I knew every single town that we would stop at, and all the bus and truck. I knew where the gym was. I knew where the health food store. This is in the days before Whole Foods. Right. And I really got into this stuff. And at the time, the only source of information we had is what you and I used to affectionately call Muscle and Fiction magazine. And so I read this stuff, high reps, low reps, steroids, no steroids, heavy reps, descending reps, and I didn't know what was up. And being a kind of overeducated, middle-class, Jewish, academically oriented, overachieving kid, I thought to myself, I'll bet I could get a degree in this. Because without a degree, you didn't, nothing counted. So I looked into these programs, certified personal trainer programs, and I found one, APA, as it turned out, the low-hanging fruit, and I got certified as an APA trainer. And I said, this is the best stuff ever, and I wanted more. So I picked up ACE, and I picked up NASM, and I picked up all the others that you and I know about. And here's this, and I'm working as a musician, I'm walking by Amsterdam Avenue, I see this sign, Equinox, opening soon, and it looks great. And on a whim, I go, well, I have a certification as a personal trainer. How cool would that be? I'm doing a show in the playbill. It's going to say, and he's also a personal trainer and aerobics. And I thought, and I actually thought in my mind at the time, that'd be a great way to meet women. So really sexy in the playbill. So I go up to Equinox. It's a little tiny office you probably remember up on 76th Street in the corner, and I see these people, and it's all construction, and there's Lavinia Erico, and I go, I'm a trainer. I'd like to apply for a job, and they hired me. I mean, God knows why.
So you were there before it actually opened.
I was there the day it opened on the floor, the very, very first day. And I often say about you, I was telling my fiance last night that I was doing this podcast and how much I was looking forward to reconnecting with you. And I said, it was like Saturday Night Live in the days of Chevy Chase and Belushi. It's like we were the original cast. It was Bob Esquire, Chris Imbo, Jonny Bowden, Annette Lang, Rocco Greco. We started that place. We were the original cast of Saturday Night Live. And, we all, I don't know when you came in very shortly after, but we had that beginnings together. And for me personally, what happened is for a while there, maybe 90, 91, I was kind of doing both careers and doing a show at night in New York called Pageant, and then working during the day as a floor trainer at Equinox. And as time went on, it became very clear to me that I was way better at this than I was at music. There were Yale grads that were coming out like this that could conduct any show and read anything, and they were just better. And I actually had a talent for this, and I think largely because it was a second career, and because I did come to it in my 40s, and I wasn't a 20-year-old surfer boy that was doing training, and so people talked to me. And I think I was kind of a natural for that. And then Equinox used me as a spokesperson a lot of times for interviews. I had a little media training. I had been a performer. I wasn't afraid to talk in front of audiences. I had, celebrity clients. And I had always been a writer. From second grade, I was in special talent writing classes. So when I was a musician, I wrote columns on music. I wrote an on music column for the music paper. I wrote about piano. I was a writer way before I was any of these things. And so naturally, when I got into fitness, I started writing about it. And I was lucky enough to have, as one of my clients, assigned to me at Equinox, the editor-in-chief of Fitness Magazine. And she brought me in as a contributing editor. I started doing some writing. And that's kind of how my writing career started in fitness. And you may remember this as well. You and I think certainly I was, and I assume you were, our training in nutrition was almost exclusively through the personal training programs that we took, the certification programs that we taught, and those were all pretty much sponsored by, and the curriculum was designed by the American Dietetic Association. So I started out as a low-fat guy. I was like one of those guys that would order the egg white omelet, and if it came with even this much yolk, I'd send it back because I knew I was going to get a heart attack if I touched that, cholesterol in that egg. So I got educated that way. And the turnaround for me started when Barry Sears came to New York to give a lecture at Equinox. I'm not sure if you were there then, but here comes Barry Sears, who is at the time, 1991, kind of unknown. He's an MIT biochemist. He wrote this book called The Zone that nobody knew about yet, and he comes and he gives this lecture, and he starts talking about the hormonal effect of food. And he starts talking about how calories are important, but they're very far from the whole picture, and that we have to look at the effect that food has on our hormones. And of course, at the time, this whole notion of 40-30-30 was radical. Now it's conservative. Now it's vanilla. It's like, that's not even a low-carb diet. Right. But at the time, given that we were told to consume 65% of our calories from complex carbohydrates, which we now know are just processed crap, and keep the protein and the fat down to zero, this was a pretty radical concept, what Barry was talking about. And I remember going up to him after that lecture and saying, Dr. Sears, if what you're saying is true, everybody else is wrong.
Right.
And he said, Yeah, that's exactly right. And actually, he wrote the introduction to my first book and has been, in a wonderful friend for 20 years. And I just interviewed him recently for my Truth About Fat Loss Summit that I did. So that's kind of how I got started. Thinking outside the box when it came to nutrition. And of course, what was interesting is that time, you, me, a square, Chris, we were presenting at a lot of conferences, and nobody ever questioned. I mean, I had no credentials in nutrition. I was a personal trainer and a psychologist. I had a master's in psych, and I had personal training certifications. I knew nothing about nutrition. And I'm giving lectures. Nobody's questioning it because I'm giving the orthodox picture of low-fat diets and lots of complex carbohydrates, and get on the Stairmaster and you will be thin. And as long as I said that, nobody ever asked me where I got my nutrition credentials. But when I began to question the establishment, when I started getting under the influence of Barry Sears, started looking into hormones, started looking into some of the things that we were not taught about diet and nutrition, all of a sudden it's like, who is he? Where did he come from? And what does he know about nutrition? So I went back to school. And I got I started with some kind of sketchy credentials like the certified nutritionist degree. And eventually I actually took a year and studied for the CNS exam, which is the certified nutrition specialist designation from the American College of Nutrition. Very, very difficult test. Went back, got a PhD in holistic nutrition, passed the CNS exam, and kind of moved away from personal training. I always felt that there were people who could teach the bench press a lot better than I could. But that I had a gift and a knack for being able to coach people in the larger issues of transformation. And I think that's where all the people that I grew up with, like you and some of my colleagues now that I know, more recently, have all moved towards realizing it ain't really just about what's on the plate. It's not really just about the number of shoulder presses you can do. It really talks about transformation and what else you got. We're tired of talking about diet at this point. I've seen all of the great ones kind of move into, I don't want to call it life coaching, but into a broader based notion of what it takes to transform your life. And the best people like yourself and some people that I know are really working in that venue now, more than just like, these are the calories you should, this much protein, this much carbs. It's really like, well, how are you going to, you're talking about changing your life. And I think that's really what fitness and nutrition have become. They're much broader basis, much more knowledge now that we didn't have when we were coming up. People need to know about a lot more stuff than we ever had to learn about. And I think the trend among the better people is like, how are we going to help these people actually change their lives? That's the action. That's the interesting part. It's way more interesting than the correct biomechanical form for a bench press. Not that that's not important, but I think that for looking forward to the 21st century, I think that fitness professionals, nutrition professionals are really going to have to be more of, they're going to need to hone up on their life coaching skills, because really that's what it's all about.
Right. Well, you're so right. But I do have to bug you about some Equinox stories, just talking about the history of personal training. Because I remember when you were teaching, like, you always made it so palatable, like when you were talking about hormones. And I mean, that was huge. And then I remember other teachers we had, like Michael Yusoff, were awesome. Right? And so just so many people. But I have to tell you one story that I still have in my head that I tell people all the time when they're like, wow, what did you guys do at Equinox? I was like, well, Bob, I think, was hugely, the impetus, behind the ideas. Sure. And I just remember sitting there in the office and Bob's going, we should do a certification. We should do a certification. I remember you just went to the typewriter and the computer. And
I loved education. I've always loved education.
But in front of my eyes, you made a certification on paper. And you were like, okay, what do you want to call it?
I did that by myself, but okay.
I know, but
very much a part of that, but okay.
It was so amazing to me. I'm like, Jonny just gets this idea, and he's just like, what do you want to call it? What days do you want to do it? How long should it be? Let's make it this many hours. And that was just so amazing to be part of that. And, I'm here in New York, and so sometimes I go work out at that Amsterdam location. Yeah, and there's some trainers that are there, and it's just so wonderful to see, like, how some of us shaped the industry that still is now. And
I thank you. I agree, and thank you as well. That is a signal accomplishment that I think we can all be proud of. I believe that the Equinox Fitness Training Institute, which you were such a huge part of and which I contributed to and which Bob was a part of course, I think is the model for the way they train trainers across the country right now.
Yeah, do you?
I think we created that template.
Uh-huh. And so you're in California now, right?
I am. Los Angeles.
Uh-huh. And I know you've done numerous books, and you're very well known, and you're big on social media and stuff. But what do you see as far as, like, I know you mentioned that you think that people in the fitness industry need to embrace the coaching concept because it isn't just about what you're eating now and all of that kind of stuff. But what if you saw a person who wanted to get into fitness, what else would you say to them? Like that's important to know or be aware of, or like a work ethic, or what you need to...
Well, I think it's a great question. I'm not usually stumped by questions, and I'm not stumped by this, but I'm trying to think of the appropriate way to really frame it. If looking back on 20 years of doing this, 25 years, whatever it is,
right?
It actually is 25 years. It's scary to say. There's a few truths I've arrived at for myself, and I would, if I were mentoring young people coming up wanting to be fitness trainers, I would probably try to pass on some of these lessons that I've learned. One of which is beauty comes in all sizes. Sexiness comes in all sizes. Not everybody can have a six-pack. Not everybody needs a six-pack.
That's awesome.
And And that's a hard concept because we are constantly inundated with media messages that say anybody can sit on the beach and eat this 7,000 calorie crappy whatever it is that they're eating and have a six-pack and look like a Calvin Klein model, and it's not true. And the more that I have learned, and the more that we all learn collectively about the microbiome, about hormone disruptors, about genetics, about the fact that we now know that what your grandmother ate has a lot to do with whether or not you're going to be fat. I mean, these are astonishing. This is astonishing data that we did not have when you and I were starting. Right. And I would suggest to people that this is a lot more complex than we thought it was. That the smartest people in the field, and I've talked to many of them, I go to conferences, I interview people, and I can tell you that the smartest obesity researchers in the world who know more about it than anyone else think they know nothing. They're the first ones to say, we don't even, this is like, there's much more to this than we know. Dariush Mozaffarian, who is one of the top researchers at Harvard and is on all those, women's health, not the Women's Health Initiative, but the Nurses' Health Study and the Health Professional Follow-Up Study, all that stuff. He's on that team. He said recently, a couple of years ago, we used to know about 10% what we need to know about nutrition. Now I think we're up to about 40%. So I think that the first thing I would tell people is have a lot of humility about what we don't know. The smartest people know what they don't know. The dumbest people think that there's nothing that they don't know. So that would be the first thing. And then again, because I've seen people struggle with body image and with not getting results and with just all kinds of things that touch on their ability to break through ceilings that they've imposed themselves, limits that they've imposed on themselves, the ability struggling with this, what the role that stress plays in all of this, In understanding and accepting all of that, I would say that this whole notion of having the body that you've always dreamed of is many more components than anybody ever dreamed of. There are many more influences. We didn't even begin to explore the potential influence of GMO foods. I mean, there's so many things that are now impacting this whole milieu that I think that the greatest lesson you could give a young fitness professional is to have great and healthy respect for all the stuff we don't even begin to know about, and to understand that clinical experience, or what you actually find in the field, whether you're an MD, whether you're experimenting with antidepressant drugs as a psychiatrist, whether you're a fitness professional experimenting with different routines, to know that people respond with enormous individuality to these things, whether it's a drug, whether it's a food, whether it's a fitness routine. They were all so unique and individual, and I would encourage people not to get into, I think that even in fitness and nutrition, we reflect what's going on in the political arena. We've gotten very partisan. The paleo people don't talk to the
that's so well said.
Vegan people are like, and the South Beach people hate the Atkins people. I mean, they become tribes, and we get very, very defensive about our position, and we got to ease off of that, because you can have the best diet program in the world, and if you personally have an allergy to one of those foods, and that's an obvious example, that diet ain't the right one for you, or you need to modify it. And that happens 100 other ways besides just an allergic response. Some people, it may look on paper like a great diet, but it's like a shoe. It's got the right leather, it's got the right material, but it doesn't fit. And to me, the action is not in finding the perfect diet, it's in finding the right fit between eating plan and individual. That's where the action is. And if we could just shift the headset of the people who provide these services, like trainers and nutritionists, to thinking about compatibility of a plan with this individual, understanding this individual. You know, I say this all the time in lectures and presentations, the difference between Western medicine and Eastern medicine, and it's applicable to this. Western medicine says, what's the symptom? What's the disease this in front of me? And Eastern medicine says, who's this person in front of me who has the disease? And that's what we need to do in fitness and nutrition as well. Who's this person in front of me?
That's awesome. What do you think the average person just on the street needs to appreciate about a fitness professional or a personal trainer that they might not know about or understand? Or like, I feel like people don't realize how hard of a job it is to try to connect with another human being, and then when you've got 6 of those different human beings every day, and like, so
what do I think is the hardest thing about that? Or
no, like the average person who says, oh, you're a personal trainer, you know, but like, do you understand what that means? Like, how complicated that is? Because I'm trying to understand potentially 10, 12 different people on a daily basis for an hour of uninterrupted time. And, you know, like, just to appreciate how difficult that is. And
it's a good point. I would kind of reverse that question just a little bit, or take it from a different angle. When people who've been in the business, people who've dealt with the public, people who are trainers or nutritionists or chiropractors or naturopathic physicians or whatever we are, get along together and have a beer and talk about, you know, it's great for us to talk about how unappreciated we are and how people don't really understand how difficult the job that we do is. But for the public, they don't give a you-know-what. Here's the best example I can give you is I'm an avid tennis player, and I play every single day.
Wow.
And I had gone through about 9 different teachers in Southern California since I moved out here in 2002. And the fact is, they're kind of like personal trainers and nutritionists, and we, the consumer, the public, I don't care how hard their job is. What I want to know is he going to make my serve faster? Is he going to make my placement better? Is he going to improve my ground strokes and my volley? So all I'm looking at is results, not how hard it is for them to do. And what I have noticed is, and I finally have a teacher like this, that the very best teachers, I mean, they don't have to tell you how hard their job is, they just have to do it. And when they do it properly, you see the results, and not only do you see the physical results, but you get the best teachers, the best trainers, the best nutritionists, the best tennis teachers will present the information in such a way that you not only get what you're looking for in that narrow arena, like physical fitness or tennis strokes, but it becomes something that you can, oh my God, that's how I run my relationships.
Exactly.
Oh my God, that's how I drive on the freeway. We were talking, here's a great example, because what I'm working on in tennis right now is looking at my opponent. Most tennis teachers just work on your strokes. It's like, it could be anybody there. You don't even know what they're doing. When you have someone who's really good at it, they will focus you completely on what's that guy doing, who is this person I'm playing, what's their strength, what should I hit to their backhand? It's not just about you.
Right.
And that goes for acting. The best actors are not just about how's my performance, it's how am I feeding off the person I'm acting with. The best relationships are not just about am I happy, but how is the person I'm interacting with responding, and what kind of things do I need to do, say, or be to respond to this human being, not just any human being. And I think that the best fitness professionals and the best nutritionists and the best people who perform these services, trainers, teachers, whatever, help you to see the global implications of these breakthroughs. That, you know, when you're actually looking at the person across the court, well, that might actually translate to being a better listener in your relationship, and it might even translate to being a better driver when you're on the road, because you're aware of more other people. And that's the kind of thing that I go, the aha moment as a teacher that I want to see. When somebody gets, oh my God, I see this in 10 different areas of my life, not just my bench press. Am I giving up? maybe I give up in some other areas. Are there some other areas I don't push through? And that's what I think is the gift of the best of the people that we are talking about.
That's terrific. So can you, I'm gonna let you go in a minute, but can you give us one?
Oh no, I'm just getting started. I thought we're just getting started.
Can you give me one pearl if I go to work tomorrow? Give me one thing that you think the average person doesn't understand about nutrition. You mentioned a lot about, I see your book, The Smart Fat, and like something that somebody could take away right now. And I know you have a zillion of them.
Yeah, the hardest part of that question is to come up with what's the take home. Do you know what I mean? When there's so much misinformation about about nutrition, so many bad beliefs and false fears of fat, and I mean just all kinds of things. So it's hard to know where to start. But I guess if I had to pick one high level take home, this is what you leave with kind of thing, is probably the quality of the food you eat matters more than almost anything else, more than the proportion of fat, the proportion of carbohydrates, the proportion of whether you're in ketosis, whether you're in a high carb diet, whether you're eating the quality of food. Because you could be a vegetarian and eat nothing but Cocoa Krispies, you can be a meat eater and eat nothing but hot dogs, and really what is probably going to make the biggest difference is this food real food? Did it really exist in nature? Will it spoil if I put it outside? Would my grandmother recognize it as food? Because I can tell you she would not recognize Munchables. Yes. Or drinks that come in or peanut butter and jelly sandwiches that come in a thing that you squeeze.
Right.
Would they recognize this as food? Is it real food? Because if it is, that's a really good starting point.
That's awesome.
If you could just start with actual real food. And you know what? You don't have to know nutrition. You don't have to be a biochemist. Everybody knows what real food is. Don't kid yourself. You know if it's real food or not. And if you started with that, and even with exercise, there's so much controversy over what's the most effective exercise to get ripped or to get muscles, and as you well know, and as we've probably been told people more times than either of us can count, there's a very big difference between exercise for fitness and exercise for bodybuilding or for fitness and exercise for general health.
Right.
So for the average person, if I had to give them two things to do every day, one is look at the quality of your food, and two is take a walk. A walk is not going to get you skinny. A walk is not going to get you ripped, but a walk is going to reduce your risk for heart disease, diabetes, cancer. It's going to grow brain cells. Exactly. It's going to increase well-being. It's going to lessen depression. And yeah, it's not going to give you a six-pack, but man, the benefits of just a 20-minute walk 3-4 times a week. If you were starting from nothing, I'd say take a walk 4 times a week and eat real food.
That's awesome, John.
And the rest of it is details.
I often say that in workshops to trainers. Like, I don't even think trainers understand like what's considered adequate exercise for health benefits or for heart health. Because we're in this little fitness bubble. And then you wonder why people aren't listening to you.
Yeah. And in that one last thing is I'm always saying this. I know you are too, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But maybe somebody who's listening hasn't heard this before. We got to stop using weight loss as the metric of success on anything.
Yeah.
Not only just in life, but of a diet. I mean, I've had people tell me, I went on that HGAH diet and I ate 500 calories and I lost. Yeah, I know. And you would lose it on cocaine too, and you'd lose it in a concentration camp. That's not the only metric that we have to use. And unfortunately, it's too often the only metric. And we go, well, that diet worked. Well, I know, so does cocaine. Right. The point is, we got to start looking a little bit more long range and looking at metrics besides just that. And that's why I think it's so important to look at what's your well-being. If you had a little wheel of, how are you on relationships? How are you on finances? How are you on energy? Possibly the best metric in the world to really measure how you're doing in life. How's your energy? How's your sleep? How are your bowel movements? I mean, there's a lot of things to look at besides just what did the scale do. And the more that we can move people away from that scale mentality and that mentality that says weight loss is really the only thing I'm looking at in terms of whether something's successful or not, I think we'd be doing people a huge favor.
That's terrific. All right, well, I'm going to let you go, but I might bug you another time to talk.
Anytime. It's a pleasure to talk to you and reconnect with you. And thank you for all that you've done in this world for the last 30 years.
Excellent. Thanks, Johnny.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye-bye.